the Learning Solutions Consultant at eCom. Welcome to this afternoon's seminar. Isn't this event fantastic? Busy? Wonderful? Yep. I'd like to start by taking the opportunity to thank you all very much for taking time out of a busy day to join us for a chat about accessibility and how it's about much more than design standards. If I could ask a quick favour, if you do have any questions, could we hold them to the end, because we're on a bit of a timeline, or hop over to stand F8, which is just over there on the other side of Articulate, and our team will be able to help you understand a bit more about what we do. I thought, by way of introduction to myself, that a bit of a career history might be useful. I'm old, and I've been working with learning technology since the 1990s, when it was on floppy disks and all sorts of other old media. First of all, gaining experience in the further education sector as a practitioner, taking the journey from being a librarian through to being a learning technologist. And then I joined the team at eCom about 5 years ago after some other private sector experience. In that time, I've been involved in around 150 different learning technology projects. So things from content creation through to implementing learning management systems, helping organisations with their assessment strategy and delivering online assessment. And I've been on lots and lots of different journeys with clients in a range of industries. So corporate organisations in retail, manufacturing, finance, food and drink. Across the public sector with some small-scale learning projects, through to widespread initiatives like training the NHS. Supporting awarding organisations with their learning journey, with their infrastructure, supporting CPD and also supporting exam clients. More recently, we've been working in the third sector. We've been fairly late to adopt learning technology for their organisations. I think it may be fair to say I'm raising some smiles around here. But supporting them with internal learning and development initiatives, volunteer development and advocacy programmes which are in partnership with other organisations. I often get asked by my friends who don't know what I do for a living, what does a learning technology consultant do? And I basically use my experience and that of all of my colleagues to walk with people in organisations who want to use technology wisely in their learning and what they do. Sometimes we're on a whole journey together, so we're from the beginning, right through the strategy, through implementation, through planning, right through to the evaluation phase, and sometimes we're much more tactical and a much more targeted support needed. But all too often it's our team who are the specialists, who are coaching organisations who simply don't know what they want or where to start. They've been at an event like this and they're overwhelmed with information. Defining a clear strategy and a direction of travel is certainly how they help. Come on, move on. So, we're here today to talk about accessibility, but what is accessibility? I really like the BBC's definition, which is accessibility is the word used to describe whether a product, so a piece of e-learning content, a learning management system, a test or assessment, a web page, a mobile site, an app, can be used by people of all abilities and disabilities. When it comes to designing for the web, this catch-all term of accessibility can quite quickly, and very often at the speed of light, become a world of acronyms and exotic pieces of technology. Please do connect with me for more detail after this if you want that technical support. What we're not doing today is talking about the technical standards of accessibility and talking about the guidelines and talking about the legislation. I'm not going to say anything about that. The focus of this session relates to some of our experience with a long-term project with the Royal National Institute for Blind People, is on the why of accessibility and some of the human aspects of that we see in our day-to-day work with clients. Let me introduce you to that project. RNIB are a leading sight loss charity in the UK. They've got a couple of thousand staff, they've got about 6,000 volunteers. And about 3 years ago, I had a very strange phone call from a chap based in one of their offices nearby us, who said he wanted help to do something and could we help him? And we said yes. Over the following few months, we did a bit of strategy development with their senior team and really got to know the culture of that client. Following on from that, we support their in-house implementation teams with another strand of the work, building capacity in their in-house team to manage subject matter experts, to project manage e-learning development, and also take on some of the instructional design tasks to help their employees and their subject experts translate the content into something that we can work with. Approaching 20 projects later, we really operate as one team in 2 organisations. As you can imagine, they're international thought leaders in all things to do with accessibility and visual impairment, because they've got a high proportion of their staff, a high proportion of their volunteers, and a high proportion of their extended workforce are all people who have some sort of sight loss. They've got a pretty clear policy on accessibility that we had to meet, and a lot of their learners, this is what they use. This is their first device of choice because these are the most accessible things. You know, desktop not really accessible to a blind person, this is much more so. So we very much took a view that we had to spend some time observing the blind and partially sighted people, so people on the test team, stakeholders across the organisation and accessibility experts, and find out how we best approach this development piece. I'm going to make one of my colleagues laugh now, because we did have instances in our office during the development phase where we had our team with blindfolds on using the content and moving through the journey and testing that out. What I want to talk about though is how that experience changed our approach to accessibility as a company and made us feel much more connected to that. I very much used to be in the mindset that providing an alternative experience for someone with a disability was absolutely fine. And indeed that's how we kicked off the work with RNIB, but I've changed my mind on that as a technology consultant. What struck us most is how taking a disability first approach can help you open new doors into ways of thinking about your solutions. You might discard many of the things that you come up with. In fact, we did lots and lots of that during this project. But it really, really helped. You know, change your own mindset, take that first step. Turning accessibility on its head, and again, I'm going to wave the phone around, there's lots of mainstream technology that actually grew out of accessibility products. All of your Cortana, your Siri, your Google VoiceOver, all of that stuff was originally designed for people who needed that support. It can backfire, because we did have a chat in the office the other day about the doll's house incident with Alexa. Don't know if anyone saw that on the news, where there were millions of children, hundreds of children ordering doll's houses inadvertently. Anyway, I'd like to hit the pause now on the technology side of accessibility and explore some of the human factors that we promised to explore with you. Obviously technology's changed many things. There's some grey hair in the audience like mine, and it's had a huge impact on L&D in organisations. I certainly know this event looked very different about 10 years ago, before there were billions of in-hand devices. Whilst we were kind of constructing how we would approach this presentation, we had a thought about the impact of digital technology on our own lifetimes. Now, I'm older than most of you in the audience, but I've had to learn and take a journey through that digital revolution. You know, I was born in the 1960s and used early technology as a child. Anyone? Philips tape player, anyone? Yeah, that type of thing. And I entered the workforce very much in that kind of Space Invaders generation. You know, I often tell a story about how I was responsible for checking the college's only email account and printing out the emails onto memo paper from the principal. And colleagues don't believe me, the technological revolution in the workforce in my time. been thinking about how it changes, using digital devices changes how you perceive things. My first career was a librarian. You know, you went to books, you went to microfiches, you used all the tools and resources that were available, and all of this is in your hand. Seek information, a map of how to get here today, a video of how to replumb your bathroom, lived experiences on TripAdvisor, all that stuff is there, and it's there now, and you don't need any help to find it. Thinking on the impact on organisations of this stuff, on how learning is consumed. I certainly know when I started my career, it was very much production line, classroom-based delivery was the norm to achieve efficiency in organisations. Learning is now in the hand of the person, and we could chat all day about whether that's with or without cultural drivers in an organisation to achieve that, or any responsibility to engage on the learner's behalf, but let's save that chat for next year. What strikes me is how much information needs in organisations have changed. You know, you're away from that top-down approach to training, happens from the top down, and it's very hierarchical, towards project and matrix teams. However, information and learning needs changed. Have they changed? Are we just using different ways of getting the message across? In my work with clients, this is a key theme of what I do and what our team do, is help organisations balance their strategic business needs with the demands of their workforce. How do you do that? And my glib answer is carefully, with thought and with consideration. Think about for a moment how dependent your organisation is on technology. We had a bit of a mad chat in the office the other day, which was around what if the millennium bug and all that consternation of Y2K, for those of you who are old enough to remember it, was now. Would our organisations be able to operate? Would they be able to communicate? Would they be able to collaborate if this was all switched off suddenly? So what are your strategic learning needs? You know this best for your organisation. Close alignment, accelerating the overall business strategy. Each organisation will express this very differently. People strategy, learning strategy, culture strategy. But core to all of these, and the things that we see in our day-to-day working lives, are the central themes of building capability in the people that you have now to maximise their potential and their productivity and therefore profitability for your business. Reflecting back to the experience that we had on RNIB that got us interested in a wider aspects of accessibility, their drivers were pretty typical of an organisation who were about to take the initial steps into using learning technology, or for an organisation who's consolidating lots of siloed activity into something more coherent. Those common drivers were a business strategy which was focused on improving the customer experience, some workforce planning which had led to a decision that they needed some widespread tactical interventions quite quickly, a decision that technology could help but they didn't know how, and then a whole series of decisions on how to, do we do this in-house, do we collaborate with another organisation, do we bring in external expertise to deliver the project. For your organisation, whichever route's taken, there is one key question for me, and that's how can your strategy help make that learning accessible to your workforce? Removing artificial barriers, great place to start. Clear communication with all of the stakeholders involved in the project, but keep all this stuff visible in your business case or your project rationale, and bake in the fact that you need to make things accessible very early in the journey. It's really easy to lose sight of all that stuff as you get caught up in the concept, you get caught up in the development phase of a piece of content, and where the ideas of how start to take centre stage. You can get carried away with the latest tool or the latest innovation. That's a great thing. Sometimes it needs to be called back a bit. and you've got your own team's natural desire to experiment, work with that. My one piece of advice for you is that retrofitting accessibility can be a really challenging thing to do. Think about it first. We consider all different kinds of abilities and disabilities relating to sight loss, mobility and hearing when we design for accessibility. But there are two things that are not often taken into consideration, and I'd just like to highlight these to you today, as they're sometimes overlooked in all the great ideas churn. First of all, don't assume that you know what your learners' digital skills look like. We've all got these devices in hand. You know, we're very lucky in this industry. We're technologically adept people who are using technology for learning. But this graph here shows some recent statistics for the UK workforce. The 17%, the blue on the other side of me, is the number of adults in the UK workforce who cannot use technology of any kind. They don't have a laptop, they don't have a tough book, they don't have a mobile phone. Yes, I'll admit there are some nuances on age relation on that. You know, it's mainly older people who fall into that bracket. But when you think of that, it's almost 20% of the population. And if you're asking them to do something online for the first time, how are you going to make that journey as smooth as possible? Moving through the stats, the 14%, top right at 1 o'clock, these are people who can perform very simple tasks that they've been taught how to perform. So things like opening, reading and deleting an email. And please, only one thing at a time. Don't give me 5 open screens or 2 screens on my desktop. I consider myself to be in the 34% of the kind of bottom there. These are people who can use multiple applications at once. They can have their calendar on one screen and the work that they're working on the other screen, and then they can multitask and they can pick up a device. And they can use some advanced features. The 29%, and again there is some age-related skewing in this, are those who are digitally adept. They can use many more devices, they understand how they work, they've been brought up with ICT as part of their everyday life. The little 6% across the top are our champions, those people with enhanced skills, those people who can design for the web, who can build content, who can code in the background and do all of these things. So think about what your workforce looks like and do some research and find out what their skills actually are. Whilst I was looking at all this statistical stuff, I did have a thought about the prevalence of what we call disability, and I'm wondering if there's such a thing as digital disability. Moving on from digital skills, consider the literacy in your workforce as well. The most recent stats for the UK I could find on this were from a government survey in 2011. And closest to me, that almost 15% of people in the workforce have the reading age of an 8-year-old. So a primary 3 or primary 4 child, the same age as my son, 14% of the workforce. Next up, the next almost 30% have a reading age of 11, been distributed across the UK. That scares me. As an educationalist, that scares me. I don't know what it does to you. That's almost half of the workforce. The other half, the bar on the extreme right-hand side, are those who can read your average broadsheet newspaper, so a reading age of 16 and above. So consider this example. I don't know, are any of you working in manufacturing spaces? No? Okay. We work with a couple of manufacturing organisations who have an ageing workforce who are fairly allergic to technology, it's fair to say, and they're looking to bring in learning technologies. What expertise and what support do they need to do that, and how are they going to plan around accessibility when considering both literacy and digital skill. The next thing for us to consider is how do you create more accessible learning experiences for your people in your organisation. I've got a whole list of hints and tips here, just things for you to consider. If you take away one or two of them, my mission's accomplished. Know that the various standards and guidelines out there are there to support you and support your project. Think about accessibility from the beginning of the learner's or candidate's journey. Get it right for your organisation. There's no point in having fabulously accessible content if the journey to get there, logging into the internet and finding the learning management system and logging into that and finding the content is not accessible. Think about that whole piece. Cater for the needs of many learners. We're all different. Plan for accessibility. If you have to, make a checklist and have that as the front of your project. Influence where you can. It's great if you've got a subject matter expert who's got all this technical knowledge inside their head and they want to not normally fit their life of experience into a 1 hour piece of content with 30 slides. But think about that. Think about how you can influence that type of individual who's closely connected. Keep the language really simple where you can. Think about that 44% of people. Design tip, if you're building something. I've always learned this. Every time I go up to a design studio at eCom, guys are using colour checkers. There's loads of them on the web. Make sure you've got a good contrast between what you're trying to tell people and the background that it's on. Use a build tool that helps you with that process. Shameless plug over to the eCom stand over there. Provide signposts for your learners, and please do, if you take one thing away from this session today, remember that you're not the person who's doing this piece of learning. What's absolutely obvious to you might not be obvious to someone who has different skills and different abilities. The last thing I'm going to have a brief chat about today is how to enable a good focus on learning. We're all learning professionals in this room, but I'm constantly amazed by the amount of times we develop a piece of content and have to prompt our client to say, what's the meaningfulness of this course? Why is the person being asked to do this? What's the clarity of purpose? That very first part of the experience, is that called out? Again, a big part of what we do is help people avoid cognitive overload. I've seen some smashing examples of e-learning in my time and some fairly awful ones in my career. Consider the pace of the content, consider how you can control that, consider how the person on the receiving end can control that, and actively look for ways to improve their digital confidence and their digital skills. If putting in something a little bit neat with some clear instructions is going to help them use something in the future, use the opportunity to do that. Also consider what's the role of your supplier. Hopefully you've got a really good consultative relationship with them and that they will help you transition some of their knowledge to you. And that in that transfer of knowledge, it will help build your team's skills and make great experiences for your people. Just to wrap up, I'd like to let you know that eCom, we do much more than content development. Our why, the reason we exist, is to make other organisations more efficient, more effective and more productive through our experience in technology. Some of the ways we do this are helping you on all of this journey, making content relevant, making it accessible, making the technology unobtrusive where we can, encouraging better assessment journeys, better learning management journeys, helping people with licence to practice, endpoint assessments, and supporting on and offline digital accreditation. These are just some examples of what we do. What we'd like to be remembered for is taking the time with our clients to understand what drives their strategy and how we enable organisations to achieve their learning goals. I'd like to say thank you very much for listening to me for the last 20 minutes or so. And does anyone have any questions?